Before the rise of Rome, before Athens became a center of philosophy, before London, Paris, or even Babylon reached their height, there was Egypt. Not simply Egypt as a kingdom, but Egypt as a living idea. A civilization born from water, memory, ritual, and continuity. Along the banks of the Nile, human beings achieved something almost impossible. They created cities that did not merely survive for centuries, but for millennia. Cities that witnessed the birth of organized government, monumental architecture, astronomy, theology, trade, and written language, and somehow remained alive long after empires collapsed around them. When we speak about ancient Egypt, many people imagine ruins, silent temples, empty deserts, broken statues. But the truth is far more extraordinary. Egypt's oldest cities were never truly abandoned. Their names changed, their religions evolved, their rulers came and went. Yet the heartbeat of these places continued uninterrupted across thousands of years. In this series, we will journey through 40 ancient Egyptian cities that still exist today. Cities that witnessed the rise of the ancient Egyptian kings, the birth of organized civilization, the arrival of empires, and the transformation of human history itself. From sacred religious capitals and powerful royal centers to ancient trade hubs and agricultural communities, each city carries a unique story of resilience, identity, and continuity across thousands of years. And in this episode, we begin our journey with 8 extraordinary cities: Faiyum, Naqada, Tanis, Buto, Memphis, Heliopolis, Abusir, and Kift, places where the spirit of ancient Egypt never truly disappeared, and where the echoes of one of humanity's greatest civilizations can still be felt today. These cities are not simply archaeological sites. They are chapters of a civilization that refused to disappear. This is the story of how they were born, how they shaped human history, and how their spirit still survives today. Faiyum. The oasis that taught humans how to stay our journey begins west of the Nile Valley, in a place where desert and water learned to coexist. Faiyum. Long before the pyramids rose above the horizon, before the ancient Egyptian kings wore crowns of gold, early humans were already settling around this fertile depression connected to the Nile through natural waterways. Archaeological discoveries reveal human activity in Faiyum, dating back to nearly 7,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest continuously inhabited regions in Egypt. But Faiyum was not born as a royal capital or military fortress. It was born because of survival. The ancient lake known today as Lake Karun created a unique ecological paradise in the middle of the desert. Fish filled the waters. Wild grains grew naturally. Birds migrated through the wetlands. The environment allowed early humans to transition from temporary hunting camps into permanent agricultural communities. And this changes everything. Because once humans stop wandering, civilization begins. The people of ancient Faiyum became some of the earliest organized farmers in North Africa. They cultivated wheat and barley. They domesticated animals, they developed storage systems for grain, they learned how to manage seasonal water cycles. In many ways, Faiyum became an experimental laboratory for early Egyptian civilization. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Faiyum is not how old it is how alive it still feels. Even today, life in Faiyum still revolves around the same ancient relationship between humans and water. Fishermen continue working along Lake Karun. Farmers still depend on irrigation canals connected to Nile systems developed across thousands of years. Palm groves still shape the landscape. Traditional mud brick architecture survives in rural villages. Folk songs about harvests, lakes, and desert life still echo across the region. And then there is the intangible heritage. Faiyum carries one of Egypt's deepest traditions of environmental wisdom. Generations learned how to survive difficult climate conditions through adaptation, cooperation, and respect for natural cycles. In a world now facing climate crises and water scarcity, Faiyum feels strangely modern again. This ancient oasis may have one of the oldest lessons humanity ever learned. Civilization survives only when humans learn to cooperate with nature rather than dominate it. Naqada, the prehistoric city that laid the foundations of ancient Egypt. Now we travel south into Upper Egypt, to Naqada. At first glance, Naqada might seem less famous than cities like Memphis or Thebes, but historians and archaeologists know something extraordinary. Without Naqada, ancient Egypt as we know it may never have existed. Around 4000 BCE, while much of the world was still organized in scattered tribal societies, Naqada emerged as one of the most advanced cultural centers in prehistoric Egypt. In fact, the entire late pre-dynastic era of Egypt is named after this city, the Naqada culture. This was not yet the Egypt of pyramids and giant temples. This was Egypt in the process of becoming Egypt. And in Naqada, we can literally watch civilization forming. The people here developed advanced pottery decorated with symbolic imagery. They established long-distance trade routes reaching Nubia, the Sinai, the Levant, and perhaps beyond. Copper tools became increasingly sophisticated. Burial practices evolved dramatically, suggesting the rise of social classes, religious beliefs about the afterlife, and early political authority. Some of the earliest symbols associated with kingship in Egyptian history appear during this period. The roots of the ancient Egyptian power began here. Archaeologists discovered ceremonial palettes, carved symbols, and elite tombs suggesting that Naqada was part of the political transformation that eventually unified Upper and Lower Egypt under the first ancient Egyptian kings. But Naqada was not built only through politics. It was built through culture, and that culture still echoes through Upper Egypt today. The sense of strong community identity, the deep attachment to land and ancestry, the oral storytelling traditions, the musical rhythms tied to agriculture and the Nile, the powerful family structures. Even certain folk celebrations in Upper Egypt preserve ancient patterns of seasonal communal life. Naqada teaches us something profound. Civilizations are not born from monuments. They are born from shared identity. Now we move into the Nile Delta, where rivers split into countless branches before reaching the Mediterranean Sea. And here stood Tanis. Known today near San el Hagar, Tanis became one of ancient Egypt's greatest northern capitals. Its rise began during the late New Kingdom, but it flourished especially around 1000 BCE during the Third Intermediate Period, when political power shifted northward. Imagine approaching Tanis during its golden age. Massive temple pylons rise above marshlands. Colossal statues line ceremonial roads. Priests move through sacred courtyards carrying incense and offerings. Royal barges glide through Nile canals connecting the city to the Mediterranean world. This was not a provincial town. This was a royal capital. Some archaeologists even call Tanis the Thebes of the North. And yet Tanis lived in constant struggle against nature itself. Unlike Upper Egyptian cities built along relatively stable desert landscapes, Delta cities faced shifting river branches, floods, marsh expansion, and environmental instability. Entire waterways moved over centuries. Ports disappeared. Agricultural lands transformed. Many cities vanished completely because of these changes. But Tanis adapted, again and again, and that adaptability became part of Egyptian resilience itself. Today the ruins are quieter, but beneath the silence lies a city that once connected Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Near East. Local Delta traditions still preserve traces of ancient life. Fishing culture, agricultural festivals, boat craftsmanship, and the deep communal relationship between humans and river ecosystems. Tanis reminds us that survival is not always about strength. Sometimes survival is about adaptation. Buto, the sacred city of the cobra goddess. Long before Egypt became one kingdom, it was divided into two worlds: Upper Egypt in the south, Lower Egypt in the north. And in Lower Egypt, one sacred city stood above all others: Buto. Today known as Tel El Farahin, Buto was already ancient before the pyramids were built. It served as one of the earliest political and religious centers of northern Egypt. But its true power came through spirituality. Buto was the sacred city of Wadjet, the cobra goddess, protector of kings, guardian of Lower Egypt, symbol of divine authority. The famous Uraeus cobra seen on the ancient Egyptians' crowns traces directly back to traditions rooted in Buto. Imagine the importance of this symbolism. Every ancient Egyptian king who wore the cobra upon his forehead carried the spiritual legacy of Buto itself. The city became deeply tied to ideas of legitimacy, divine protection, and sacred kingship. Pilgrims traveled there. Priests conducted rituals invoking divine guardianship over the land. Rulers sought spiritual approval through its temples. And while dynasties changed, the symbolic power of the serpent survived. Ancient spiritual patterns continued transforming rather than disappearing. This is one of Egypt's greatest civilizational mysteries. Its intangible heritage never truly vanished. It evolved. If one city represents the birth of unified Egypt, it is Memphis. Founded around 3100 BCE, traditionally associated with King Narmer or Menes, after the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, Memphis became the first great capital of dynastic Egypt. And for centuries, it stood at the center of one of the most powerful civilizations on Earth. Strategically positioned near the point where Upper and Lower Egypt met, Memphis controlled trade routes, military movement, religious institutions, and administration. But Memphis was more than a capital. It was the machine that organized civilization itself. Imagine the scale of activity here: scribes recording taxes on papyrus, engineers organizing pyramid construction, priests conducting elaborate temple rituals, merchants transporting cedar wood from Lebanon, craftsmen carving colossal statues, officials managing one of humanity's earliest centralized governments. Nearby rose Saqqara, home to the step pyramid of Djoser. And Memphis shaped ideas that would define Egypt for thousands of years: divine kingship, centralized administration, sacred architecture, state religion, national identity. Even after political capital shifted elsewhere, Memphis remained spiritually important for centuries. Today, the village of Mitrahina stands atop its ancient remains. And perhaps that is the most extraordinary thing about Egypt. Modern life continues above ancient memory. Children play near fallen statues older than most civilizations. Farmers cultivate fields beside temples that once shaped world history. Time layers itself upon time. Heliopolis, the city of the sun. If Memphis was Egypt's political heart, Heliopolis was its intellectual soul. Known in ancient Egyptian as Yunu, Heliopolis became the center of solar theology and cosmic philosophy. This was the city of Ra, the city where priests attempted to understand the origins of existence itself. Inside Heliopolis, Egyptian thinkers developed one of humanity's earliest sophisticated cosmologies. According to their beliefs, creation began from infinite dark waters called Nun. From this primordial chaos emerged the first mound of earth and the sun god Adam-Ra. This myth shaped Egyptian civilization for thousands of years. But Heliopolis was not only about religion, it was about knowledge. Priests there studied astronomy, timekeeping, sacred geometry, and celestial cycles. Obelisks, symbols representing rays of frozen sunlight, emerged from Heliopolitan traditions. The alignment of temples and pyramids with solar movements reflected intellectual systems developed there. Imagine standing inside Heliopolis during sunrise. Golden light strikes towering obelisks. Priests chant hymns to the sun. Astronomers observe celestial patterns. Students learn sacred texts beside temple walls. This was one of the ancient world's greatest centers of learning, and remarkably, modern Cairo eventually absorbed it. Today, beneath crowded streets and modern neighborhoods, fragments of Heliopolis still sleep underground. A city that once studied the cosmos now survives inside one of the largest urban centers in the Middle East. That continuity feels almost poetic. Abu Sir, the sacred land of solar kings. Not far from Memphis lies Abu Sir, quieter than Giza, less famous than Saqqara, yet deeply important. During the 5th dynasty, around 2500 BCE, Abu Sir became a royal necropolis tied closely to the rise of solar worship. Ancient Egyptian kings constructed pyramids there alongside massive sun temples dedicated to Ra. This period reveals an important shift in Egyptian civilization. Kings were no longer emphasizing only raw monumentality. They increasingly emphasized divine cosmic legitimacy. Architecture itself became symbolic theology. But behind every pyramid stood thousands of ordinary people: workers, stonecutters, priests, farmers, boat builders, craftsmen, families. Entire living communities existed around these sacred complexes. And while the king's names survive in inscriptions, countless ordinary Egyptians carried civilization forward silently across generations. That may be the hidden story of Egypt itself. Not only the greatness of the ancient Egyptian kings, but the endurance of ordinary people. Kift, the gateway between worlds. Finally, we arrive at Kift, known in antiquity as Koptos, one of Upper Egypt's oldest and most strategically important trade cities. Kift thrived because of geography. It connected the Nile Valley with desert caravan routes leading toward the Red Sea. Through this city flowed gold from Nubia, incense from Arabia, ivory from Africa, precious stones, exotic animals, and international trade goods. For thousands of years, travelers passed through Kift: merchants, pilgrims, soldiers, explorers. This made the city remarkably cosmopolitan for the ancient world. Different cultures met there, languages mixed, religious ideas traveled, economic systems expanded. And despite changing empires, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, Kift continued functioning because trade routes continued needing it. Even today, Upper Egyptian culture around Kift still preserves ancient values tied to hospitality, commerce, local craftsmanship, and desert resilience. The city became proof that connectivity creates survival. What makes these cities extraordinary is not merely their age, it is their continuity. Most ancient civilizations disappeared completely. Their languages died, their traditions vanished, their cities became empty ruins disconnected from living people. But Egypt is different. The ancient world never fully left Egypt. It survives in farming rhythms tied to the Nile, in oral storytelling traditions, in village celebrations linked to harvest cycles, in craftsmanship passed between generations, in music, hospitality, spirituality, and communal identity. These cities endured because Egyptians mastered one thing better than almost any civilization in history: adaptation without losing identity. And perhaps that is Egypt's greatest monument: not the pyramids, not the temples, but continuity itself.